In Untervaz, HG34 departs from the station as steam shuttle towards the Holcim area. And then the unexpected hit like lightning. The engine derailed on the second switch of the Z group. Here one can clearly see her wheels next to the track. The engine crew, the passengers and lots of festival visitors flooded immediately to the accident site. How can this happen, these engineers seem to think. Within the 3 rail tracks there are a number of turnouts that cannot be used by both gauges in both directions. Switch number 7, for example, shows in the straight position stop for standard gauge. In the same way, the accident switch shows stop for meter gauge in the turn position. In the straight position, the switch can safely be used by meter and standard gauge rolling stock. As we can see, the meter gauge wheels roll with no problems over the switch. In the position turn, however, the meter gauge equipment cannot use the switch as they run the risk to fall in between the switch. This is exactly what happened. Number 4 ran out of rails. The rails to the station, the Holcim area and in the other direction the Z group were now blocked. As a result, the passengers of the steadily arriving special trains joined the already large number of spectators. The passengers of the returning excursion were treated by a special show as they returned to Untervaz. The coaches were now uncoupled from number 4 and the passengers were asked to reboard. In the excitement, this took its time. Finally, boarding was completed and the 3 cars were pulled by a diesel shunter to the Holcim area. After some time, the MOW train, consisting of Bobo 2 number 615 Klosters and the MOW car X9101, arrived from Langquart, where they are stationed. X9101, together with the Bobo 2, was pushed to the derailment by a diesel. The unpacking and assembling of the re-rail tools now started. First, the steps were mounted on 9101 and some blocking parts were removed from number 4. The large steel plates were detached from the side of X9101 and positioned across the rails just behind number 4. On these, pneumatic lifting devices were positioned and red and blue hoses were brought to the scene. These hoses were then connected to the lifting devices on the one side and the pneumatic controller on the other side. An air generator was started, and under the latter's tremendous noise, the pneumatic lifting devices were slowly inflated until they touched the underframe of number 4. Slowly and with great care, The rear of the engine was lifted. As soon as the lifting devices were fully extended, hardwood pieces were placed beside them. Slowly, the engine was lowered onto these wood pieces. In the front, the leading axle was pulled up and fixed by a rope, and a steel plate was positioned across the rails as well. Smaller lifting devices were added and connected to the controller. The engine was now lifted in the front. As soon as the maximum extension of the lifting devices was reached, hardwood pieces were inserted, as was done at the rear. The engine was then lowered onto them, and the lifting devices were put on hardwood blocks so the next round of lifting could start. In this fashion, the locomotive was lifted from in between the rails. As soon as the distance was large enough, the smaller devices in the front were replaced by larger ones as well. The switch was now thrown under the engine so that the wheels would find rails beneath them when lowered. The moment the front wheels were above the railhead, the wood blocks were removed and replaced by a sliding plate and new pieces of wood. The engine was now tied to a catenary post by ropes and a winch. As the ropes were tight enough, the winch was used to pull the engine over the railheads. With number 4 positioned over the rails, the slide plates and wood spacers were removed and the locomotive was slowly lowered onto the rails. The front lifting devices were now removed and the crew went to the rear to repeat the same there. Finally, number 4 was on the rails again, which was acknowledged by applause and loud whistle by the other engines. With all tools back on X9101, HG34 number 4 accelerated and pushed the car onto the mainline section of Untervaz station. Number 4 herself moved to the siding to pick up her 3 waiting cars again. Back on the SBB mainline, we find EB35 number 9 with the Amor Express heading towards Untervaz. Number 9 is one of 9 engines built by the locomotive factory Maffei in München in 1910, which we will talk about in some more details later. In Untervaz, the steam shuttle composition pulled by Tigerli number 6, Perlen, of the Verein Dampfgruppe Zürich and pushed by the steam coach ZZM12 number 31 of the Urikon Baumannbahn, belonging to the historic SBB, move an old boxcar to the station. Inside the boxcar, one could find a live steam model belonging to the Dampfbad Katzensee, steam railway Katzensee. This live steam layout is not very far from Zurich-Kloten Airport and is always worth a visit. Number 4, being back in service again, started to take over her duties as steam shuttle. Did number 4 survive the accident without damage? Let us stop the film and compare the locomotive before and after the accident. Prior to the derailment, the right side of the small plough was straight. On the photo taking after the event, one can see that the small plough has taken some slight damage. Other than that, this beautifully and newly restored locomotive seems completely okay. As number 4 moves back towards the Holcim area, let us return to the EB35 of the BT Bodensee-Toggenburgbahn. She is a so-called twin hot steam engine specially constructed for fast passenger and freight trains. The special design of the EB35 did away with the usual need of turning the engine at the final stations. With a force of 1200 to 1500 horsepower, the engine was able to pull trains of up to 200 tons at 35 km per hour on a 20 per mil incline. The top speed was 75 km per hour. The colorful composition was also moved to the Untervaz station so that the passengers could get off the train. At the rear end of the train we find the SOB Südostbahn motor coach BE34 number 43 named Chino pushing. As soon as the composition arrived in the station, the steam shuttle started departing. This time it was the standard gauge composition E33 number 6 and ZZM12 number 31. With the lead to the Z group free again, the BT composition left the station to position the empty cars in the C group tracks.